Kano's Trillion-Naira rail network, the industrial shift transforming northern Nigeria. Created by Africa Global Opportunities TV. Trillions of naira, hundreds of kilometers of steel, millions of tons of goods waiting to move. Northern Nigeria is quietly building one of the most strategic industrial rail corridors in Africa. And at the center of it all is Kano. This isn't just about trains. It's about power, logistics dominance, and a new economic gravity shifting north. Stay with us, because later in this video, we'll reveal the specific high-yield investment zones where infrastructure and agriculture collide to create massive upside potential. This is Africa Global Opportunities TV. Kano is not new to industry. For decades, Kano has been one of Nigeria's largest manufacturing centers. Textiles, leather, agro-processing, plastics, cement distribution, and trade. It is strategically positioned near Niger Republic and connects into the wider Sahel region. Historically, Kano was a major node on trans-Saharan trade routes. Now, modern rail is repositioning it for 21st century global trade. Nigeria's railway modernization program, led by the Nigerian Railway Corporation, is pushing standard gauge expansion across key economic corridors, including the critical Kano-Kaduna-Abuja axis. The Lagos to Ibadan standard gauge alone has demonstrated how rail can decongest roads and accelerate freight efficiency. But the northern corridor could be even more transformative. Why? Because the north produces the food. Agricultural mass plus rail capacity equals industrial shift. Northern Nigeria accounts for over 60% of Nigeria's agricultural output, including rice, sorghum, millet, tomatoes, groundnuts, livestock. The challenge has never been production. It has been logistics. Road transport currently moves over 90% of Nigeria's freight. That means high fuel costs, post-harvest losses, long delays, damaged goods, price volatility. Rail freight changes that equation. A standard gauge freight line can move thousands of tons in a single trip, at significantly lower cost per ton compared to road haulage. If fully optimized, Kano's rail connections could move agricultural produce directly to Lagos ports, inland dry ports, export processing zones, regional West African markets. And that's where the Trillion-Naira infrastructure bet begins to reshape industrial geography. Mapping the industrial gravity shift. Let's talk about industrial gravity. Economic clusters form where three things meet. 1. Raw materials. 2. Transport infrastructure. 3. Processing capacity. The Kano-Kaduna corridor checks all three boxes. Kaduna already hosts an inland dry port, connecting exporters to global markets without moving containers first to Lagos by road. With expanded rail capacity, Kano's manufacturing hubs can plug directly into global trade routes. This reduces turnaround time, export costs, inventory holding costs. It also attracts logistics parks, agro-processing clusters, cold chain storage hubs, commodity aggregation centers. Emerging high-yield zones include the Kano Industrial Layout Belt, Kaduna to Zaria Agro-Processing Corridor, dry port logistics clusters, grain storage and milling zones. These are the areas where land values typically rise first when freight infrastructure becomes operational. But here's the critical question. Is this just infrastructure spending, or the beginning of a structural power shift? If you're interested in Africa's next big infrastructure and investment frontiers, subscribe to Africa Global Opportunities TV. We analyze data, freight flows, industrial clusters, and capital movements shaping the continent's future. And coming up next, we'll break down how this rail corridor could turn northern Nigeria into West Africa's primary export gateway. Global trade positioning. Under the African Continental Free Trade Area framework, intra-African trade is expected to expand significantly. Northern Nigeria sits at a geographic advantage. It borders Niger Republic and is closer to Chad, Cameroon, Mali, Burkina Faso. Rail connectivity reduces friction across these trade routes. If freight costs fall and speed increases, Kano becomes more competitive for processed food exports, leather goods, textiles revival, fertilizer distribution, agro-machinery assembly. The region could transform from raw produce exporter to value-added manufacturing hub. And that's where investment capital begins to rotate. Follow the freight numbers. Globally, regions that expand freight rail capacity often see lower logistics cost ratios, higher industrial density, faster GDP cluster growth. If freight volume along the northern corridor scales into millions of tons annually, 3 sectors stand to gain first. 1. Agro-processing. 2. Warehousing and cold chain. 3. Industrial real estate. Industrial land around functioning freight nodes historically appreciates faster than peripheral zones without connectivity. This is not speculation. It's a pattern seen in emerging markets where transport corridors unlock trapped economic potential. Africa's next investment frontier? When infrastructure meets agricultural mass, industrialization accelerates. When logistics cost drops, margins expand. When margins expand, capital follows. Kano's Trillion-Naira rail network isn't just about movement. It's about repositioning northern Nigeria from a production base to a processing and export powerhouse. But here's the curiosity. If the corridor fully integrates with inland dry ports and export terminals, could northern Nigeria eventually rival coastal industrial zones in economic influence? That is the Trillion-Naira question. And the answer may redefine West Africa's economic map over the next decade. The industrial gravity is shifting. The steel tracks are being laid. The freight corridors are forming. And northern Nigeria may be standing at the edge of its largest industrial transformation in decades. This is Africa Global Opportunities TV. Subscribe for more data-driven insights into Africa's rising economic frontiers. See you in the next episode.